It was the kind of mistake that only lasted 5 seconds but could ruin 5 years of peace. Rachel Bennett knew that. She had always known that. But standing in the middle of the crowded rooftop bar, with the excruciating presence of Marcus, her ex-boyfriend turned obsessive mistake, moving closer like a storm front, she made the split-second decision to lie. Not just any lie. A full-blown, irreversible, world-shattering kind of lie. "I'm engaged," she said flatly, holding up the empty ring finger of her left hand like it proved something. Marcus raised an eyebrow, smug and unbothered, as if smelling the desperation leaking off her skin. "Oh, really?" His voice dripped with condescension. "To who?" Rachel's brain raced. Around her, bodies pressed in. Music pulsed. No way out. And then, as if summoned by fate, chaos, or sheer cruel irony, a voice behind her answered with lethal calm. "Me." The voice was female. Cold. Certain. Dangerous. Rachel turned around slowly, heart hammering so loud it overpowered the bass of the music. And there she was. Dark suit. Crimson lipstick. Black silk shirt, unbuttoned just enough to be suggestive without being obvious. The kind of woman who walked like she owned the planet and probably did. Everyone in the city knew who she was, even people who pretended not to. Giselle Moreau. CEO of Moreau International. Billionaire. Untouchable. Rumored heartbreaker. Publicly private. Openly gay. Unapologetically ruthless. Hey, if you're enjoying this story, go ahead and drop a like to help us grow even more. And let me know in the comments, on a scale from 0 to 10, what score would you give this story so far? Your feedback makes all the difference. And somehow, inexplicably, standing there with one hand sliding possessively onto the small of Rachel's back like she belonged there. Rachel blinked. She forgot how to breathe. Giselle didn't. She leaned in, voice low and lethal, but her mouth curved into the most dangerous smirk Rachel had ever seen. "Play along," she whispered, warm breath ghosting against her ear. "Or I'll let him take you." Rachel didn't hesitate. She curled an arm around Giselle's waist and laughed like she meant it, tilting her head in mock affection. "Sweetheart," she purred, "you're late." Giselle's fingers pressed tighter against her spine in approval. Marcus looked stunned. Then annoyed. Then outright pissed. "You're engaged to her?" he demanded. "Since when?" "Since none of your business," Giselle said, all silk and steel. She turned to Rachel. "Ready to go?" Rachel nodded, too stunned to think clearly. And just like that, Giselle took her hand, laced their fingers, and walked them both away from the crowd, from Marcus's confusion, from Rachel's rapidly imploding night. They didn't speak until they were in the elevator, and even then, the silence was electric. Rachel's heart hadn't calmed. Her palm still burned where Giselle had touched it. Finally, Rachel turned. "Why did you do that?" Giselle didn't look at her. She stared straight ahead, jaw tight. "You looked like you needed saving." "I did." But Rachel frowned. "Why you?" Giselle turned then, gaze sharp as glass. "Because I hate men who corner women like prey. And because I happen to be there. Next time, lie better." Rachel crossed her arms. "There won't be a next time." Giselle arched a brow. "Good. Because the city thinks you're engaged to me now." Rachel laughed, half nervous. "Nobody believes gossip in this town." Giselle's expression didn't change. "Except when it comes from me. I own the building. I own the PR firm that just got the footage. I own the tabloids they'll send it to. If I don't deny it, the whole world will believe it." The elevator doors opened. Giselle stepped out, then looked back. "I suggest you come with me before it hits the news." Rachel stood frozen. Everything in her life had just changed in 3 minutes. And yet somehow she followed. Because somewhere deep down, past the panic and adrenaline, there was one undeniable truth pulsing like a war drum beneath her skin. She wanted to know what it felt like to belong to Giselle Moreau. Even if it started as a lie. Even if it ended with her heart in ruins. Rachel sat on the leather couch, hands curled into fists in her lap, as the city's skyline glittered like 1,000 knowing eyes beyond the wall of glass behind her. She wasn't sure what was more surreal, The fact that she was inside Giselle Moreau's penthouse, or that the woman herself was pouring her a glass of whiskey like this, was the most normal Tuesday night in the world. "You didn't have to bring me here," Rachel said finally, voice tight. "I could have just gone home." Giselle glanced over her shoulder, one brow raised. "And walk into a headline storm alone?" She walked toward her, heels clicking softly on the marble floor, and handed her the glass. "You're trending." Rachel blinked. "Excuse me?" Giselle sat across from her, legs crossed, perfectly composed in that way that made Rachel feel messy by comparison. "Someone recorded it."
Us.
"The ringless engagement. Your ex's face. My hand on your back. The kiss that almost happened." Rachel flushed hot. "That wasn't a kiss." "No," Giselle said, sipping her drink with maddening calm. "But it looked like one." She picked up the remote and turned on the enormous flat screen across the room. Instantly, Rachel saw herself, eyes wide, lips parted, pressed up against Giselle's side like she was something precious. The clip played on a loop, each repeat digging the lie in deeper. "Jesus Christ," Rachel whispered. "They really believe it." "They believe everything if I don't deny it," Giselle said again. "And I don't plan to." Rachel's gaze snapped to her.
Why?
Giselle didn't look away. "Because it benefits me too."
How?
Rachel asked, half defensive, half curious. Giselle rose and walked toward the windows, looking out over the city like a queen surveying her empire. "My board has been pushing for a more relatable public image. Less cold. More human. Engaged is perfect. Romantic. Softens the edges. So, I'm your emotional support peasant?" Rachel muttered. Giselle smirked. "You're funny." "I'm serious." "So am I," Giselle said, turning to face her. "This helps me. And whether you like it or not, it protects you. For now." Rachel stood. "This isn't sustainable." "No," Giselle agreed. "But it's useful. And if we play it right, we can both get what we need out of it." "What I need is to disappear," Rachel snapped. "This isn't my world. I'm a graphic designer who rents a studio apartment with a leaky ceiling and no hot water half the time. I don't belong here." Giselle crossed the room slowly, each step deliberate, calculated. "You belonged the second you made eye contact with me." Rachel's breath caught. "That's not fair." "What's not fair," Giselle said, now inches away, voice lower, "is the way you looked at me like you'd let me ruin you before you even knew my name." Rachel wanted to deny it. She wanted to run. But her body stayed frozen, hypnotized by the closeness, the intensity, the raw fire burning in Giselle's eyes. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, barely audible. Giselle reached out, brushing a strand of hair behind Rachel's ear. "Because you interest me." "You don't know me." "Not yet." Rachel's heart was trying to escape her chest. "And what if I say no?" Giselle tilted her head. "Then you can walk out that door and let the media devour you with questions, threats, and speculations.
Or you can stay.
Just for now." "Stay and pretend to be your fiancé? Stay and be safe. Stay and figure it out. Stay and see what this could become." Rachel shook her head, overwhelmed. This was supposed to be a lie. Giselle's voice dropped to a whisper. "Sometimes, lies show us what we've been too afraid to want." The silence stretched. Rachel didn't move.
Couldn't.
Finally, she let out a long, trembling breath.
"Fine," she said.
"I'll play along. But only until this dies down." Giselle smiled slowly, predatorily. "Of course." Rachel wasn't sure which part was scarier, the lie itself, or how much she already hated the idea of it ending. Rachel woke up to the soft vibration of her phone on the nightstand. For a brief second, disoriented and warm under the silken sheets, she forgot where she was. Then her eyes landed on the floor-to-ceiling windows, on the view of the skyline. Too perfect, too high, too powerful. Giselle Moreau's penthouse. Last night.
The lie.
The deal. She sat up with a jolt, running a hand through her tangled hair, only to find a neatly folded set of clothes resting on the chaise near the bed. a soft cream blouse, perfectly tailored black slacks. There was even a delicate pair of earrings and heels that looked suspiciously close to her size. There was a note resting on top of the blouse. Wear this. We're having lunch with my board. Rachel stared at it. For a full 10 seconds, her brain stalled. Then she whispered, "What the actual hell?" 15 minutes later, dressed in someone else's elegance, she stood in front of the mirror in Giselle's guest bedroom, staring at her reflection like it might offer an exit plan. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a news headline. Billionaire CEO Giselle Moreau announces surprise engagement. Fiancé identified as designer Rachel Bennett. Her stomach dropped. They'd named her. Full name. Full photo. Tagged her barely active Instagram. Her inbox was exploding. Comments. DMs. Follow requests. She barely had time to process it before Giselle's voice came from the doorway. "You clean up well." Rachel turned sharply. Giselle leaned against the frame, a fresh coffee in one hand, an amused glint in her eyes. Today she wore slate gray trousers and a soft ivory blouse, tucked in like she'd stepped out of a luxury campaign. Her hair was up, her lips red. Rachel's throat went dry. "You told them my name." "They would have found it eventually," Giselle replied, walking into the room. "Better to control the narrative." "You posted it. On your own account." Giselle's mouth curved. "I did." "Why?" "Because people would assume worse if I didn't. They'd think you were a paid actress. Or that I was hiding something." "You are hiding something. The truth." Giselle stopped in front of her. "Not everything is about truth, Rachel. It's about perception. And right now, the world perceives us as in love." "And you're fine with that?" Rachel snapped. "Walking around holding hands with a stranger? I don't think you're a stranger anymore." Giselle's voice was softer now. Quieter. "Not after last night." Rachel hated how her pulse reacted, how her body leaned forward, just slightly, like gravity recognized Giselle before she did. "What do you want from me?" she asked. Giselle met her gaze head-on. "I want you to come to lunch. Sit beside me. Smile. Tell my board how we met. Touch my hand when you laugh. You want me to perform. I want you to be convincing. And what do I get?" Giselle hesitated, then handed her the coffee. "For starters, a raise." Rachel blinked. "You don't even know where I work. You freelance. Underpaid, overworked, and one viral video away from becoming a meme. I did my research." "Jesus. You deserve better. I can give it to you, but I need you to play the part. Just for today." Rachel sipped the coffee, grateful and furious. "You're terrifying, you know that?" Giselle's smile was unapologetic. "That's why they believe I own you." Rachel's spine stiffened. "You don't. Not yet." The words hung there, heavy and uninvited. Rachel walked past her, brushing against her shoulder a second too long. "Let's get this over with." The boardroom on the top floor of Moreau International was a sleek, intimidating temple of power. 12 directors. Glass walls. Enough money in one room to fund a small country. Giselle entered first, cool and composed, and everyone rose. Rachel followed, heels silent on polished stone, heart pounding in her throat. Giselle pulled out a chair for her. Rachel sat. Cameras flashed. Someone from PR introduced her. Rachel smiled on cue, forced and poised, until the words felt foreign in her mouth. "So, Rachel," one of the board members said, an older woman with sharp eyes and sharper jewelry, "how did you and Giselle meet?" Rachel opened her mouth, paused, then glanced sideways. Giselle nodded once, subtle. "Permission."
Trust.
"We met at a bar," Rachel began. "It wasn't romantic. Not at first. I was dealing with a situation. And she stepped in. Chivalrous," the woman said, amused.
Very.
"She pretended to be my fiancé." Chuckles around the table. "And when did pretending stop?" Rachel hesitated again. Her hands under the table curled into fists. She looked at Giselle, expecting cold calculation, but what she found instead was something terrifyingly close to pride. So Rachel answered without breaking eye contact. "It hasn't." Silence. Then laughter. Someone clapped. Giselle reached under the table and touched her knee. It was brief. Electric. Rachel nearly jumped. After the meeting, as they walked back to the elevator, Rachel couldn't hold it in. You liked that, didn't you? Giselle's expression didn't change. You were brilliant. I was lying. You told a better story than I could have. Rachel stared at her, breath catching. You're enjoying this too much. Are you not? Rachel didn't answer. She stepped into the elevator. Giselle followed.
The doors closed.
The silence crackled. Rachel turned to face her. You keep touching me. You don't stop me. Maybe I should. Giselle stepped closer. Then do it. Rachel's breath hitched. Their faces were inches apart now. The tension stretched between them like a string pulled too tight. One more lie, one more glance, one more second, and they might actually break the one rule they never said out loud. Don't make this real. The elevator chimed. The spell shattered. Giselle stepped back. Dinner tonight, she said simply. You'll need something nicer to wear. I'll have something delivered. And then she was gone, leaving Rachel alone with a racing heart and the sinking suspicion that whatever this was, it wasn't just a lie anymore. Rachel hadn't expected the dress to fit perfectly. She hadn't expected the box to arrive less than an hour after Giselle left. She definitely hadn't expected it to be custom, tailored to her measurements, with a handwritten card that simply said, "Wear this tonight." No arguments. It was a sleek black slip dress, the kind that hugged curves and whispered sin. She stared at it for 10 minutes before daring to touch it. And when she finally slipped it on, when she saw herself in the mirror, neck bare, shoulders soft, the fabric like a second skin, her first thought was, she's trying to kill me. Her second, I kind of want her to. The car arrived at precisely 7. Sleek, black, silent. A driver in a crisp suit opened the door with a small nod. Rachel climbed in, palms sweating, heart racing. She hadn't spoken to Giselle all day, hadn't texted or called, hadn't replied to the photo the woman had sent earlier, a preview of the rooftop restaurant they were apparently attending. The caption had said, "Bring your appetite." Rachel wasn't sure if it referred to the food or something else entirely. When she arrived, Giselle was already waiting. And God help her, she looked devastating. Midnight blue silk, hair in waves, diamond earrings that sparkled like they were flirting with the moon. But it was her eyes, dark, unreadable, focused entirely on Rachel, that made her knees feel like water. You clean up dangerously well, Giselle said as she offered her hand. Rachel took it. Her skin was warm. You keep saying that. Should I be worried? Giselle's lips curled into something between a smile and a warning. Only if you plan to keep pretending you don't enjoy this. They were seated on a private terrace, lit by strings of soft gold light and candles that flickered with every breeze. The table was set for 2, but Rachel felt like the entire city was watching them from below. We're really doing this, she murmured, looking around. Giselle poured them both wine. We have to. Half my board is watching from that table over there. Rachel froze, then looked where Giselle had nodded discreetly. Sure enough, 3 impeccably dressed people were seated just far enough to be polite, but close enough to see everything. So, this is still part of the game. This is the spotlight, Rachel. Smile. I'm not a performer. You're doing just fine. Rachel sipped her wine, trying not to think about how exposed she felt. She hadn't signed up for this. Public appearances, expensive clothes, being looked at like she belonged in Giselle's world. And yet, when Giselle reached across the table and took her hand, Rachel didn't pull away. Her thumb brushed gently over Rachel's skin. A calculated move. A display. But it didn't feel fake. It felt like heat blooming under the surface of something carefully contained. Why me? Rachel asked suddenly, voice low. You could have picked anyone to fake this with. Someone from your world. Someone who knows how to play along without freaking out. Giselle looked at her for a long time. Then, quietly, because you didn't try to impress me. You weren't afraid to challenge me. And when I touched you, you didn't flinch. You burned. Rachel swallowed. You don't know me. I want to. The answer came fast. Too fast. and it caught both of them off guard. For a second, something unguarded flickered in Giselle's eyes. Vulnerability? No, Rachel couldn't trust that.
Not yet.
This is dangerous, Rachel whispered. Only if you keep pretending you're immune to me. Giselle leaned in slightly. Are you? Rachel looked away, but her fingers tightened around Giselle's. What happens if I stop pretending? Giselle smiled slowly, as if savoring the question. Then things get interesting. The rest of the dinner was a blur. Exquisite food, soft laughter, touches that lingered too long. And yet, the moment that burned itself into Rachel's memory came later, when they were in the elevator again, rising toward Giselle's penthouse. They stood side by side, close but not touching, tension thick between them. Then, just before the doors opened, Giselle said softly, "You don't have to go back to the guest room tonight." Rachel turned to her. What? Stay in my room. No expectations. Just stay. Rachel should have said no. She should have reminded Giselle that this was a business arrangement, a charade, a necessary evil. But instead, she said, okay. The penthouse was quiet when they entered. Giselle didn't lead her to the guest room. She led her into a bedroom that looked like a magazine cover. Warm lighting, deep tones, silk and velvet. You can sleep on the left, Giselle said, already undoing her earrings in the mirror. Rachel stood frozen. You do this often? Invite fake fiancés to share my bed? Giselle smirked. First time. Rachel laughed, a little too breathless. Is this part of the image? No, Giselle said without turning around. This part is just for me. Rachel's pulse thundered. She crossed the room slowly, deliberately. When she reached Giselle, she took the earrings gently from her hand and set them on the dresser. Their eyes met in the mirror. I don't know what I'm doing, Rachel whispered. Giselle turned to face her fully. Then let me show you. Their lips didn't meet.
Not yet.
But the air between them shifted. Closer. Hotter.
Charged.
Rachel stepped back just before the edge tipped. Good night, she said, voice trembling. And then she climbed into the bed, Giselle's bed, and lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, wondering when exactly the lie stopped being a lie. Rachel didn't sleep. Not really. She lay in Giselle's bed, on the left side, like instructed, wrapped in soft sheets that smelled faintly of expensive perfume and something sharper, more intimate. Giselle's scent. And the silence between them stretched like wire, too tense, too quiet, filled with everything neither of them dared to say. Giselle hadn't touched her once. Not when they turned off the lights. Not when Rachel shifted restlessly. She kept her distance, physically. Emotionally? That was another story. Because even with 3 feet between them, Rachel felt her presence like fire licking at her spine. At some point, close to dawn, Rachel slipped out of bed. She padded barefoot across the penthouse, trying not to think about how absurd her life had become. She stood by the glass wall overlooking the city, arms crossed over her chest, heart a thunderstorm. The lights below blinked like stars. The skyline was endless. And she felt small. So small. Behind her, she heard soft footsteps. She didn't turn. Couldn't sleep either? She asked. Giselle's voice was quiet. No. A beat of silence. You always run when things get too close? Rachel closed her eyes. You always push people just to see if they'll break? Giselle didn't answer. She stepped up beside her, both of them staring into the night. I didn't plan this, Rachel whispered. I didn't ask to be part of your game. It stopped being a game the second you stopped flinching when I touched you. That's not fair. Isn't it? Rachel turned to face her. The city lights painted golden lines across Giselle's face, softening the sharpness, making her look almost human. Almost breakable. Rachel didn't trust it. You're used to getting what you want. Usually, Giselle admitted. And now? Rachel asked. Do you want me? Giselle's eyes locked onto hers. Do you want the truth? Try me. Giselle stepped closer. I want you the moment you challenged me in that elevator. I wanted you when you laughed at me in my own penthouse. I wanted you the second you walked into that boardroom and lied like your life depended on it. So, I'm just another conquest? No, Giselle said, voice low. You're the one who makes me want to stop conquering. Rachel's breath caught. She hated how fast her heart responded. You're dangerous. Only to the ones who matter. The silence between them crackled. Then Rachel said, I don't know if this is real. It doesn't have to be real, Giselle said, her voice like velvet and smoke. It just has to be undeniable. And then she kissed her. There was no hesitation. No pretense. Just heat. Giselle's hand slid into Rachel's hair, pulling her forward, and Rachel let herself fall into it, into the hunger, the tension, the fire that had been building from the first moment their eyes met. Rachel's hands found Giselle's waist, then her back, pulling her closer, closer, until there was no space left between them. The kiss deepened, wild and urgent, and somehow still terrifyingly gentle, and it shattered something inside Rachel. Because it didn't feel like pretending, not even for a second. When they finally broke apart, Rachel was breathless, lips tingling, heart a riot in her chest. Giselle rested her forehead against hers. I wasn't going to do that, she murmured. Why did you? Because I wanted to know if I was the only one losing control. Rachel didn't answer.
She didn't need to.
Her kiss had spoken for her. Giselle pulled back, eyes searching her face. We have a gala tomorrow night, she said softly. My company's biggest annual event. Every investor, partner, and press outlet will be there. And they all expect to meet your fiancé. Exactly. Rachel nodded slowly. I'll be ready. Giselle hesitated. After tonight, are you sure? No, Rachel said honestly. But I'm going anyway. She turned and walked back toward the bedroom, pulse still racing, knees still weak. And this time, when she slid into bed, she didn't stay on her side. Giselle joined her a minute later, silent and warm, and neither of them spoke as they fell asleep. But when the sun rose the next morning, the space between them was gone. Rachel had never been to a gala. She'd certainly never worn a dress that came with its own security detail. The gown arrived at noon, delivered by a personal assistant who introduced herself as Elise and spoke with the crisp efficiency of someone who managed world leaders in her free time. Miss Moreau selected this herself, Elise said as she unzipped the garment bag. It's custom Dior. One of one. Rachel stared at the shimmering ocean of midnight blue fabric, her voice stuck somewhere between awe and panic. Right. Elise gave her a once-over. Hair and makeup arrive in 1 hour. Then she left.
Just like that.
Rachel exhaled sharply and stared at the dress like it might bite. That night, when the car pulled up to the gala, Rachel stepped out like someone she barely recognized. Her hair was swept into a soft twist at the nape of her neck, strands framing her face. Diamond earrings sparkled at her ears, tasteful, but unmistakably real. The dress clung to her like shadow and moonlight. And when Giselle emerged from the other side of the car in a black tuxedo with a silk lapel and her signature crimson lips, Rachel forgot how to breathe. Giselle's eyes traveled the length of her slowly, deliberately. You look, she said, stepping closer, like sin wrapped in starlight. Rachel rolled her eyes, half smiling. You're really committing to the fiancé act, huh? Giselle leaned in, her lips brushing against Rachel's ear. You're not acting. And just like that, the air changed. Again. Inside the venue, it was all glass, gold, and glamour. Photographers flashed. Guests whispered. Powerful people circled like planets in orbit. And everywhere they went, eyes followed them. Giselle was magnetic, lethal in her elegance, and Rachel had never felt so simultaneously seen and scrutinized. Smile, Giselle murmured through her teeth as they passed a wall of cameras. Like you just remembered how much you love me. Rachel forced a smile and whispered back, You're lucky I didn't trip over this dress and take us both down. Giselle smirked. That's love, baby. Inside, the ballroom glowed under chandeliers like frozen fire. Waiters floated by with champagne. A jazz quartet played in the corner. Giselle greeted people effortlessly. Firm handshakes, sharp nods, charming half-laughs. Rachel stayed by her side, smiling, nodding, pretending. But every time Giselle's hand grazed her lower back, every time her fingers curled around Rachel's waist in that perfectly possessive way, Rachel's heart beat a little faster. It was dangerous how much she liked it. Then he appeared. Marcus. Her ex, uninvited. Unwelcome. And now standing 3 feet away with a champagne flute and a smirk. Small world, he said, eyes on her, voice loud enough to carry. Giselle turned sharply. Rachel stiffened. What are you doing here? She asked. Networking, he said with a shrug. Didn't realize I'd be bumping into the happy couple. His gaze slid to Giselle, assessing. I guess I underestimated your taste. Rachel opened her mouth, but Giselle was already stepping forward. And I guess I overestimated your intelligence. Her tone was ice.
Leave. Now.
Marcus held up his hands, grinning. Hey, no need to get territorial. I was just saying hi to an old friend. Giselle's voice dropped. You're seconds away from being escorted out by security. Test me. Marcus hesitated, then backed off, muttering something Rachel didn't catch. When he disappeared into the crowd, Giselle turned to her, jaw tight. Are you okay? Rachel nodded slowly. I didn't think he'd be here. Giselle stared after him for a long moment. If he comes near you again, he's done. You can't control everyone. Watch me. Rachel touched her arm gently.
Hey.
I'm fine. Giselle looked at her, something raw flickering in her eyes. I didn't like the way he looked at you. Jealousy. Rachel teased, trying to lighten the moment. No, Giselle said. Possessiveness. Rachel blinked. That's worse. I know. They stared at each other, too long, too openly. Then Giselle said, Dance with me. What?
Now.
Before I lose my mind. Giselle led her onto the dance floor without waiting for reply. The band shifted into a slow, smoky tune, and Giselle pulled Rachel close, one hand at her waist, the other sliding into hers. You don't dance, Rachel whispered. You don't lie very well. And yet here we are. They moved together slowly, surrounded by other couples, but somehow completely alone. Giselle's body was warm, her touch steady, and Rachel hated how natural it felt.
How easy it was to lean in.
Are we still pretending? Rachel asked softly. Giselle's breath ghosted against her cheek. I don't remember anymore. Rachel's heart was pounding. Her hands tightened around Giselle's. This is getting dangerous. It already was. Giselle looked at her then, really looked like she was memorizing every line of Rachel's face. Tell me to stop, she whispered. Tell me to pull back. Rachel opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I can't, she breathed. And then they kissed. Right there on the dance floor under the chandeliers in front of half the city. Giselle kissed her like she'd been waiting for this moment her entire life. And Rachel kissed her back like she was falling, hard, fast, without a parachute. When they broke apart, the room had gone quiet. But Rachel didn't care. Not anymore. She turned to Giselle and said, loud enough for whoever needed to hear, You're mine too. Rachel didn't sleep that night. Again. But this time, it wasn't because of anxiety or uncertainty. It was because her mind wouldn't stop replaying the kiss, on the dance floor under the chandeliers, with half of New York watching. Giselle's mouth on hers. The way her hand trembled, just once, against Rachel's back. The way the world seemed to hold its breath when their lips met. The silence that followed hadn't been awkward. It had been reverent. And when Rachel had pulled back and whispered, You're mine too, she had meant it. God help her. She had meant every word. Now, the sun was rising, slicing through the tall glass windows of the penthouse like a blade. Rachel stood barefoot in the kitchen, wrapped in one of Giselle's oversized button-downs, a coffee mug cradled in both hands. She stared at her phone, watching as her follower count skyrocketed. Mentions. Headlines. Speculation. Billionaire CEO kisses fiancé at gala, confirmation or performance. Rachel Bennett. Who is the mystery woman behind Giselle Moreau's heart? From bar to ballroom, inside the whirlwind romance of the year. She set the phone down, nauseated. This wasn't her world. She'd told Giselle that from the beginning. But now she was in it, neck deep, drowning, and the water was rising fast. Behind her, she heard footsteps. Giselle entered the room like a shadow, quiet, composed, deadly beautiful. Her hair was still damp from the shower, her suit pressed to perfection, her face unreadable. Rachel didn't speak. She didn't have to. Giselle was already holding up her phone. "We're everywhere." Rachel nodded. "I saw." Giselle set the phone down on the counter and walked to the window, staring out at the skyline. The board is thrilled. Stock spiked. PR is calling it the most humanizing moment of my career. "You kissed me like it was a press release?" Rachel snapped. Giselle turned sharply. "That's not what I said. But it's what it sounds like." "I kissed you because I wanted to," Giselle said. "But now it's out there, and we have to control it." Rachel crossed her arms. "You kissed me in front of everyone. You didn't ask. You didn't check in. You just decided. I don't ask for permission to protect what's mine. I'm not yours." Giselle blinked, and for the first time since Rachel had met her, she looked stunned. Not furious, not smug, just stunned. Rachel's voice softened. "I know this started as a lie. I agreed to play the part. I knew what I was walking into. But that kiss? That wasn't part of the script. It wasn't scripted for me either." Giselle's voice was quiet now, vulnerable. "Then why do I feel like a pawn in a game I don't understand?" Rachel asked. "Why does everything you do feel like a move on a chessboard?" "Because that's how I survive," Giselle said, stepping closer. "That's how I've built everything I have.
Control.
Strategy.
Power.
Without it, I lose everything." Rachel looked up at her. "And me?" "You were supposed to be a distraction," Giselle whispered. "But you've become the only thing I can't control." The words landed between them like a confession. Rachel's chest tightened. "Then maybe it's time to stop trying." Giselle exhaled shakily, like she hated how right that sounded.
But she didn't respond.
Instead, her phone buzzed again. She checked it, her expression darkening. "What is it?" Rachel asked. "You're getting interview requests.
Finan.
Vogue. Vanity Fair. Me? They want your story. How we met. How I proposed. They want us." Rachel blinked. "I can't do that. I'm not built for this." "Then we say no. I'll handle it." "Like you handled everything else? Like the kiss?" Giselle's jaw tensed. "Rachel, I just need space," Rachel said. "A minute to breathe. To think." Giselle looked like she wanted to argue, but then slowly she nodded. "Okay." Rachel walked past her, out of the kitchen, out of the penthouse. She didn't take a driver. She walked. The streets were loud, chaotic, full of life that didn't care about billionaires or fake engagements or kisses that weren't supposed to mean anything, but somehow meant everything. She found herself in a park, sitting on a bench, surrounded by strangers. She watched couples walk by, real ones, laughing, touching, arguing. She felt hollow, and full, and confused. Her phone buzzed. It was a message. Not from Giselle. From Elise. Giselle canceled her meetings for the day. She's not herself. Rachel stared at the screen, fingers trembling. She should have felt victorious, like she'd finally gotten under Giselle's skin. But instead, it made her ache. Because for the first time, the woman who controlled everything had lost control over her. And Rachel wasn't sure what to do with that power. Not yet. Rachel stood in front of the penthouse door, staring at the sleek black surface like it might swallow her whole. Her hand hovered over the panel, hesitating, trembling. She hadn't planned to come back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But after hours of walking, after scrolling through 1,000 versions of herself on social media, after sitting in silence with her own thoughts screaming inside her chest, she had realized something both terrifying and inevitable. She missed her. Not the headlines. Not the silk sheets or designer gowns or the fake life they'd built. Just her.
Giselle.
The woman who kissed her like she meant it. The woman who, for one breathless second, looked like she would fall apart if Rachel stepped away. She pressed the intercom. No response. She tried again. Nothing. Her thumb hovered over the keypad, then she tried the code Giselle had entered so many times. 0905. The door clicked open. Rachel stepped inside slowly, unsure of what she expected. The penthouse was dark. Not empty, just dim, quiet, like the silence after a storm. She heard the faint clink of glass. Followed it. Found Giselle barefoot in the living room, still in the black blouse from earlier, sleeves rolled up, hair pulled loose like she'd run her hands through it too many times. She sat on the floor, not the couch, a tumbler of whiskey in her hand, a full bottle beside her. Rachel froze. Giselle looked up. No mask, no armor, just eyes red-rimmed, face bare, mouth parted like she'd been holding back something too big to contain. I didn't think you'd come back, Giselle said softly. I almost didn't. Rachel crossed the room slowly, her heels clicking against a marble, sharp in the quiet. But I couldn't stop thinking about the way you looked at me when I walked out. Like you'd already lost me. Giselle let out a hollow laugh. That's because I had. Rachel sat down across from her. Close but not touching. You canceled your meetings. I couldn't think straight. That's not like you. No, Giselle agreed, looking down into her glass. It's not. Rachel tilted her head. Why me? Giselle met her eyes, and for the first time since they met, she looked young. Not polished. Not powerful. Just a woman unraveling. Because you don't need me.
You challenge me.
You make me forget who I'm supposed to be. And for once, I wanted something I couldn't buy or control or predict. Rachel's throat tightened. You don't let people see this side of you. Because if they do, they'll know I'm human. And I don't know how to survive like that. Rachel reached out, slowly, and took the glass from her hand. Set it aside. Then, without speaking, she shifted forward and wrapped her arms around Giselle. Not seductively. Not with an agenda. Just held her. Giselle froze at first. Then melted. Her arms came around Rachel's waist like she'd been waiting years to do it. Her head dropped to her shoulder. And for a long time, they stayed like that, entangled on the cold marble floor, breathing in sync, holding on like the world might tear them apart if they let go. I thought I was protecting you, Giselle whispered. But I think I was protecting myself. From what? Rachel asked. From wanting you too much. Rachel closed her eyes. It's too late for that. Giselle pulled back just enough to look at her. Is it? Yes, Rachel said, voice steady. Because I'm not leaving again. Not tonight. Giselle's hands tightened on her back. Say that again. Rachel leaned in, forehead pressed against hers. I'm not leaving. Even if this isn't just a lie anymore? Especially because it's not. Giselle kissed her again, but this time, it wasn't wild or public or strategic. It was slow, tender, desperate in its honesty. Rachel kissed her back like she was anchoring herself to something real for the first time in months. They didn't make love that night. They didn't need to. The intimacy came in whispers. In the way Giselle held Rachel's hand when they finally moved to the bed. In the way Rachel curled into her side like she belonged there. In the way silence didn't feel empty between them anymore. Before falling asleep, Giselle murmured into her hair, "This is going to get harder." I know. People will want more proof. Let them watch, Rachel whispered. I'm not afraid of being yours. Giselle kissed her temple. And I'm terrified of being yours. But she held her tighter anyway. The morning after felt different. Not because of the sunlight flooding into the penthouse, or the quiet warmth of the sheets, or even the way Rachel woke up with her head resting on Giselle's shoulder, her body curved perfectly against the woman she'd once thought of as untouchable. It felt different because, for the first time, it wasn't a performance. There were no board members to impress. No cameras. No carefully curated appearances. Just Giselle, still half asleep, arm draped possessively around her waist, face softened in the glow of something real. Rachel watched her for a moment, feeling a strange kind of peace settle in her chest. But peace never lasted long in Giselle Moreau's world. Not even for a morning. Her phone buzzed once. Then again. Then relentlessly. Giselle groaned and reached for it. Her brows furrowed. What is it? Rachel asked. Giselle sat up slowly, scrolling. We're trending again. Rachel rubbed her eyes. What now? Giselle didn't answer immediately. Instead, she handed Rachel the phone. On the screen was a headline, Giselle Moreau and fiancé to give first public interview, tonight. Rachel blinked. I didn't agree to that. Giselle stood, already heading toward the closet. I was going to tell you this morning. PR thinks it's the perfect time to shift the narrative, reinforce the engagement, address the kiss, humanize me further. Rachel's heart began to pound. You scheduled a live interview? Pre-recorded. Controlled. No surprises. And when were you going to ask me? Giselle paused mid-step. I wasn't. Wow. Rachel got out of bed slowly, anger bubbling. You really don't know how to stop doing this, do you? Doing what? Making decisions for both of us like I'm some puppet in your empire. Giselle turned, eyes sharp. I'm protecting us. No. You're protecting yourself. Your image. Your company. Your narrative. You didn't even ask me how I felt about going on camera, telling the world our story. Because I knew you'd say no. Exactly. And you still did it anyway. The room crackled with tension. Giselle stepped closer. Rachel, this is how things work. If we want to survive this, we have to control the narrative. If we disappear now, they'll assume it was a stunt. The damage to my name. To your name, Rachel interrupted. Not to us. Because clearly, this has always been about you. That landed like a slap. Giselle froze. Rachel grabbed her clothes from the chair, dressing quickly. Cancel the interview. I can't. Then I won't show. Rachel. Giselle's voice softened, but her control was fraying. Please. Rachel looked at her, truly looked, at the woman she'd kissed in front of the world, the woman who had held her like she meant it, the woman who made her feel like more than just collateral. I'm not a pawn, Giselle. And if you keep treating me like one, you'll lose me, not the fake fiancé. Me. She walked out. Again. This time, it hurt more. Hours passed. Giselle didn't call. Rachel didn't expect her to. She knew Giselle well enough now to understand that silence was her shield, her way of keeping the world out until she could reassert control. But something about this silence felt heavier, more dangerous. She paced in her tiny apartment, phone in hand, heart in her throat. Then it buzzed. A single message from Elise. She went ahead with the interview. Alone. Rachel turned on the TV just in time to see Giselle sitting across from a primly dressed journalist, cameras rolling, lights glowing. And for the first time, Giselle looked wrong. Distant. Cold. Like she was performing again. Miss Moreau, the journalist said, there's been much speculation about your engagement. Some have called it calculated. Others romantic. What do you say to those who question the legitimacy of your relationship? Giselle didn't flinch. I say they don't know what they're talking about. And your fiancé? Rachel is unlike anyone I've ever known. She grounds me, challenges me, makes me feel, she hesitated. Just for a second. Alive. Then where is she tonight? Giselle's jaw tightened. She needed space. Space? Or distance? It's not your business. Rachel's heart twisted. The anchor smiled politely. You understand the optics, of course. A sudden engagement. A high-profile kiss. And now separation. Some people think it was all a publicity stunt. Giselle looked directly into the camera. Then those people don't understand what it means to fall in love when you least expect it. And how terrifying it is to want someone who sees past everything you've built to protect yourself. Rachel's breath caught. So, is it real? The anchor asked. A long pause. Giselle's eyes flickered with something raw, unpolished. Yes. Too real. Rachel's phone slipped from her fingers. She barely heard it hit the floor. Rachel didn't realize she was crying until the tears hit the collar of her shirt. She sat on the floor of her apartment, knees pulled to her chest, heart pounding in her ears. Giselle's voice echoed in her head over and over again. Then those people don't understand what it means to fall in love when you least expect it. and how terrifying it is to want someone who sees past everything you've built to protect yourself. She hadn't said it for the cameras. Not really. Rachel had seen enough of Giselle's controlled persona to know when the woman was performing and when she was bleeding. That interview had been a confession. Not perfect, not poetic, but real. And Rachel had walked away from it. From her. Because she was scared too. Because feeling something that deep, that fast, that completely, it felt like a risk she wasn't ready to take. But the truth was, she had already taken it. She was already in love with Giselle Moreau, and no amount of distance or silence or self-protection could change that. She stood abruptly, grabbed her keys, and ran out the door.
She didn't call first.
Didn't text. She needed to look Giselle in the eye. She needed to say the things she should have said hours, maybe days ago. The penthouse door opened before she even knocked. Elise stood there, surprised. I know, Rachel said. Let me in. Elise stepped aside. Rachel walked into the darkened penthouse, heart hammering. Giselle stood by the window, still in the same black suit from the interview, her back to the room, arms crossed tightly. She didn't turn around. You saw it. I did. I didn't plan to say all that. I know. Silence stretched between them, heavy and brittle. You were right, Rachel said finally. About what? That falling in love is terrifying. Giselle turned slowly, her eyes tired, her expression unreadable. Are you saying you're in love with me? Rachel stepped closer. I'm saying I never stood a chance. Giselle's eyes fluttered shut, like those words physically struck her. I tried to control everything, she whispered.
You.
The story. The damage. But the one thing I couldn't control was how I felt every time you looked at me like I was more than just power in a suit. Rachel smiled faintly, eyes burning. You are more. You're the only person who ever made me feel like I wasn't disposable. You're not. Then stop treating me like a risk you have to manage and start treating me like a woman who's choosing you. Over everything. Giselle moved before Rachel could finish the breath. Their bodies collided like magnets pulled too hard. Giselle's mouth crashed into hers, not delicate, not soft, but desperate and raw and starved. Rachel melted into it, hands gripping her jacket, gasping as Giselle's fingers tangled in her hair like she'd die if she let go. The kiss deepened, became a promise and a plea and an apology all at once. And when they finally pulled apart, foreheads pressed together, Rachel whispered, Don't ever do that without me again. I won't. No more interviews, no more decisions without me. You're right. I want to be in this. Really in it. So do I. Giselle cupped her face gently, her thumbs brushing Rachel's cheeks. Tell me you're staying. I'm staying. Tonight? Every night, if you'll have me. Giselle kissed her again, slower this time, like sealing a contract written in skin and breath. They didn't talk after that. Not with words. Their bodies spoke instead, tangled in silk sheets, in low gasps and quiet laughter, in the way Giselle held Rachel like she had no intention of letting go. It wasn't performative. It wasn't calculated. It was real. And in the early hours of the morning, when Rachel lay with her head on Giselle's chest, listening to her heartbeat, she finally said it aloud. I love you. Giselle froze for a second. Then she kissed the top of Rachel's head and said, I think I loved you the moment you lied in that bar. Rachel laughed against her skin. That was a terrible lie. No, Giselle murmured. That was the beginning of the only truth that ever mattered. The morning after should have been peaceful. And for a few rare hours it was. Rachel woke up tangled in Giselle's arms, her body warm against silk sheets, her breath slow and steady against Rachel's neck. There was no need to speak. They lay there in silence, the kind that felt like understanding, like two hearts finally beating in rhythm. Giselle's hand drifted lazily over Rachel's back, fingertips tracing invisible circles, as if memorizing her. Rachel thought, this is real. This is ours. Until the knock.
Loud.
Repetitive. Urgent. Giselle was up in seconds, her body tense, expression hardening before Rachel had even processed what was happening. She threw on a robe and went to the door. Elise stood there, face pale, phone in hand. You need to see this. Giselle took the phone and stared. Her jaw clenched. Rachel sat up in bed, the sheets clutched around her. What is it? Giselle didn't answer. She turned the phone so Rachel could see. It was a news alert. A photo. Rachel Bennett, ex of tech mogul Marcus Hale, allegedly rebounds with billionaire CEO Giselle Moreau in calculated move. The image was old. Rachel and Marcus at some tech party years ago, laughing. But below it, the article was venomous. Accusations of Rachel being a social climber, an opportunist, someone who had manipulated the story of a fake engagement into a real power grab. Who released this? Rachel asked, heart pounding. Elise hesitated. Marcus. Of course he did, Giselle muttered. He's calling in every favor he's got. And it gets worse, Elise said, pulling up another article. This one had a photo taken from across the street of Rachel and Giselle inside the penthouse, kissing. It was blurry, invasive, taken without consent. The headline read, More Than Business. Giselle Moreau's fiancé caught in intimate moment, real or PR strategy. Rachel's stomach dropped. Someone's watching us. We'll increase security, Giselle said immediately. I'll sue every media outlet that shared it. I'll bury them. That's not the point, Rachel snapped, voice shaking. They're attacking my life.
My past.
My integrity. They're attacking us, Giselle corrected. Because they can't stand seeing someone like me fall for someone like you. What does that mean? It means you're not who they expected. You're not wealthy. Not powerful. You don't fit the narrative. I never asked to be part of a narrative, Rachel said, standing now. All I did was lie to get away from my ex, and now I'm the center of a damn media war. And I'm going to protect you. By controlling everything again? Giselle's eyes flickered. By making sure they don't destroy you. You mean making sure they don't destroy you? The words came out sharper than Rachel intended. Giselle flinched. Silence fell. Elise cleared her throat and slipped away, leaving them alone. I didn't mean, Rachel began. Yes, you did, Giselle said quietly. And maybe you're right. Rachel sighed. This is just a lot. I love you. But this constant exposure, this pressure to perform every second of the day, it's exhausting. Giselle stepped closer, her voice low. Then let's leave. Just for a few days. We'll disappear. Somewhere private. No phones. No headlines. Just us. Rachel looked at her, searching her face. You do that? Walk away from everything for a little while. I'd burn it all down for you, Giselle said. And Rachel knew, in her gut, she meant it. They left that night. A private jet. A villa in the south of France. The world couldn't follow them there. No paparazzi. No phone calls. Just crashing waves, warm sunsets, and each other. For 2 days they were free. They swam at midnight. Made love with the windows open. Laughed until their stomachs hurt. Giselle cooked.
Badly.
Rachel teased her mercilessly. They danced barefoot on the terrace. And for a moment, the illusion of safety was enough. But reality has sharp claws. On the third morning, Giselle stepped out onto the balcony to take a call she thought was private. Rachel stayed inside, curled on the couch with coffee, until she heard a name that made her freeze. Sophie. Giselle's voice low. You weren't supposed to reach out. Not now. A pause. Then sharper. Don't threaten me. This has nothing to do with you anymore. Silence. Then, she doesn't know. And she doesn't need to. Rachel stood, heart in her throat. Giselle ended the call and turned to find Rachel in the doorway. Who's Sophie? Rachel asked. Giselle stiffened. No one you need to worry about. That's not your call. It's from before you. A mistake. One that's clearly not finished. It is, Giselle insisted. She's trying to stir things up. Jealous. Vengeful. She knows exactly when to strike. And what exactly doesn't she want me to know? Giselle looked away. There were complications. We were together. On and off. She didn't like being left. Especially not for someone like you. Someone like me? Rachel repeated, voice hollow. You mean someone who didn't grow up in mansions or fly private before breakfast?
No.
I mean someone real. Then why lie about her? Why hide it? Giselle's voice cracked. Because I knew you'd look at me differently. Rachel took a step back. And you were right. Rachel stood on the stone balcony, ocean wind tugging at her dress, but all she could feel was heat, fury, betrayal, heartbreak colliding in her chest like a car crash in slow motion. Giselle stayed still by the sliding glass doors, arms folded, eyes unreadable for once. And Rachel hated that. Hated that the woman she'd finally let in, finally trusted, was shutting her out again, with the same cold silence that once made her irresistible and now made her unbearable. You lied to me, Rachel said, voice shaking. By omission. By silence. By every time you looked at me and told me I was the only one, while Sophie was still somewhere in your shadows. She's not in my life anymore, Giselle replied, controlled but softer than usual. But she's still a part of your past. A part you tried to erase like it wouldn't matter.
But it does.
Because I'm here now. And if you want to keep me, you don't get to pick which parts of yourself I get to see. Giselle stepped closer, her voice trembling beneath the surface. I was afraid. Of what? Of you looking at me like you are now. Like you're ready to walk away. Rachel didn't answer. She turned her back to the ocean, facing Giselle head-on. Then why give her that power? Why let her be the one to ruin what we have instead of trusting me with the truth? Because I don't know how to do this, Giselle said, her voice cracking. I know how to run companies, close billion-dollar deals, manipulate headlines. But this? She gestured between them. This is not something I've ever known how to protect. You protect your image, Rachel said bitterly. You protect your power. But when it comes to me, you hide. I was hiding from myself, Giselle said. And I didn't realize how much until you looked at me and made me feel like I was enough, not as the CEO, not as the billionaire, but as a woman who has no fucking clue what to do when someone loves her without agenda. Rachel stared at her. For a moment, the pain in her chest cracked open to make room for something else. Not forgiveness.
Not yet.
But understanding. So, what was Sophie to you? She asked, more gently now. Giselle closed her eyes, inhaled slowly. She was comfortable, calculated. We fit on paper, two powerful women, both ruthless, both careful. But it wasn't love. Not really. It was proximity and control. She hated when I started pulling away. And when she found out about you, she knew exactly where to hit me. My reputation, my fear, my guilt. And instead of telling me, you tried to manage it all behind the scenes. I thought I could contain it. You can't contain everything, Giselle. Rachel stepped closer now, her voice low, raw. Especially not me. Giselle's shoulders dropped slightly, like those words hit something deep and real inside her. I know. And I'm sorry. Do you want me to leave? The question hung between them like a loaded gun. Giselle's eyes snapped to hers, panic flickering before she could hide it. No, then give me the truth. All of it.
From now on.
No more PR moves. No more protection through control. Just you and me, or nothing at all. Giselle stepped forward slowly, like approaching a wild animal. You are the only thing in my life I don't want to cure it. You're messy and brilliant and infuriating and real. I want that.
I want you.
And I'll give you everything, Rachel. Just please don't walk away. Rachel searched her face, trying to read between the words, to see if it was still a performance. But there was no mask left. No walls. Just Giselle, the woman who had once played a part in a lie and was now begging to live the truth. Okay, Rachel said finally. But if you ever shut me out again, I won't come back. I believe you. Good. And then Giselle pulled her in. Not like before, not desperate, not hungry, but grounded, present, certain. Their kiss was slow, deep, and laced with relief. When they pulled apart, Giselle whispered, "Do you still want forever with me?" Rachel smirked against her lips. Only if I get to be the one who proposes this time. Giselle laughed. Actually laughed. The sound raw and startled and so deeply human it nearly broke Rachel's heart again.
Deal, she said.
But just as they turned to walk back inside, Giselle's phone buzzed on the table. Rachel picked it up without thinking. The screen showed a single, sharp text message. Interview with Sophie, airing tonight. Unedited. Rachel looked up at Giselle, heart sinking. We're not done. Giselle took the phone, her jaw locking tight. She's going public. About you. About us. What now? Giselle looked at Rachel, and for the first time since they met, her voice didn't shake. Now we fight back. Together. Rachel sat on the couch, her knees pulled to her chest, staring at the flat screen as the countdown began. Giselle stood behind her, arms crossed, jaw clenched, so tight it looked like it might crack. Neither of them spoke. The silence between them wasn't cold anymore. It was a held breath. A shared dread. The network logo flashed. The music started. And then Sophie appeared. Perfectly lit. Perfectly composed. Wearing soft pastels, her blonde hair falling in effortless waves, her expression the picture of tragic sincerity. Rachel felt the back of her neck tighten. Giselle didn't move. Thank you for having me, Sophie said, her voice low, almost wounded. I didn't want to do this. But I think the truth matters. Especially when people are being misled by a narrative. The interviewer leaned in, fake concern in her eyes. You're referring to Giselle Moreau's engagement? Sophie offered a delicate nod.
Yes.
We were together for nearly 2 years. And when she ended things, it wasn't because she'd fallen in love. It was because she'd found someone more useful. Rachel's heart dropped. She told me Rachel wasn't her type, Sophie continued.
Said it was temporary.
A distraction. That she needed someone soft to make her look softer. That it was about image, not love. Giselle flinched behind her. Rachel turned, her eyes sharp. Did you say that? No, Giselle said immediately. I never said those words. Not to her. Not to anyone. But you thought it, didn't you? Giselle opened her mouth. Closed it. In the beginning, she admitted.
Yes.
I thought you were the right image. That I could control the narrative. That you were the safest option to soften my public edges. Rachel's stomach twisted. And now I know I was wrong. You're not the safe option. You're the dangerous one. The one I'd risk everything for. On screen, Sophie's voice cut through again. I still love her, she said. And I think part of her still loves me. She just doesn't know what to do with someone who truly sees her. So she chose someone easier to manage. Giselle stepped forward then, grabbed the remote, and shut off the TV. The room fell into silence again, but this time it pulsed with something electric.
Pain. Rage. Fear.
She's lying, Giselle said, her voice cracking. She's trying to twist everything because I didn't stay. Because I didn't love her. Not like I love you. Rachel stood, slowly. That's what scares me. Because if you chose me for how I looked beside you, how do I know you didn't convince yourself you loved me just because it made sense? Giselle closed the space between them. You don't know. You can't. But you can feel it. You can feel how, every time I touch you, it's not a performance. You know I would set fire to every inch of my life just to keep you safe. You know I am a mess when you're not around. That I forget how to breathe when you look at me like this. Like what? Like I'm still worth saving. Rachel's hands were trembling. Her chest hurt. I believed you, she whispered. I still do. But I need more than belief now. I need proof that you choose me because of who I am, not who I'm not. Giselle reached out, slowly, and cupped her face. Then let me prove it. And then her mouth was on Rachel's, no more controlled, curated kisses. This one was fire and ache and rawness. A kiss that tasted like desperation and redemption all at once. Rachel kissed her back with the same fury, the same ache. They stumbled backward until Rachel's back hit the wall, Giselle's hands sliding up under her shirt, their mouths never parting. The clothes came off in pieces, in gasps. They didn't make love like people who were trying to impress. They made love like people trying not to fall apart. Later, tangled in sweat-damp sheets, skin on skin, breath shallow and heavy, Rachel whispered, "What happens when the world turns against us?" Giselle kissed her shoulder, her voice low and rough. "Then we stop asking for permission to exist. And we fight. Together." Rachel closed her eyes. "I want to believe that." "Then don't believe the world," Giselle murmured. "Believe me." Just then, Giselle's phone buzzed. She reached for it, scanning the message. Her eyes darkened. "What is it?" Rachel asked, sitting up. Giselle looked at her. "They're launching an investigation." "Into what?" "Into us. Into the legitimacy of our engagement. Into whether I manipulated stock value through the narrative of our relationship." Rachel's blood ran cold. "They're trying to destroy your company." "No," Giselle said slowly. "They're trying to destroy you. Because if they prove this was all a stunt, you'll be the one they blame for helping me orchestrate it." Rachel stared at her, heart pounding. "They'll come after me?" "They already are." Giselle met her gaze, steady and solemn. "And I won't let them. But from here on out, we're not just lovers in a lie that became the truth. We're a threat. And that means they're going to come for everything." Rachel didn't hesitate. She reached for Giselle's hand and laced their fingers together. "Then let them. I'm not running anymore." The headlines didn't stop. Neither did the calls. Or the cameras. Or the vultures. Rachel woke up to her name trending for all the wrong reasons. Gold digger or mastermind? Who really is Rachel Bennett? Fake fiancé, real fraud? Did Giselle Moreau manipulate markets with a lie, and did Rachel help her? The world wasn't just suspicious. It was hostile. The lie they had built together, the one that had accidentally become the truth, was now being dismantled and weaponized. Rachel stared at the screen, numb, sitting in the corner of Giselle's office while 3 lawyers argued in clipped tones. They barely looked at her, as if she wasn't part of the narrative, just a problem to be cleaned up. Giselle sat at the head of the table, arms folded, jaw set like stone. But Rachel could see the tremor in her fingers, the darkness under her eyes, the way her walls were cracking under the weight of 1,000 headlines and boardroom threats. "They're demanding a public statement," one of the lawyers said. "We can control the damage if we sever the personal relationship from the professional fallout." "You mean if we lie?" Giselle said, voice sharp. "Again." "Not a lie," the lawyer replied. "A reframing. You announce a mutual decision to end the engagement, admit to emotional turbulence, take responsibility, and isolate the issue from the company." "You want me to throw her under the bus," Giselle snapped. "You want me to act like she didn't save my life the second she walked into it." Rachel stood slowly. "Do it." Giselle's head snapped toward her. "What?" "They're right," Rachel said. "If we keep this going, they'll tear you apart. Your company, your legacy, your name." "I don't care about my name." "But I care about mine," Rachel said, eyes burning. "And right now I'm a walking headline. A liability. I don't want to be the reason you lose everything you built." Giselle's voice dropped. "You're not." "Then let me prove it." Rachel turned to the lawyers. "Set up the press conference. But I'm going to speak. Alone." The room exploded. Objections. Legal warnings. PR nightmares. But Rachel didn't flinch. She looked at Giselle and said, "Trust me." And for once, Giselle didn't argue. She nodded. That evening, the conference room was converted into a press platform. Cameras everywhere. Journalists packed in. Rachel stood behind the podium in a simple black dress, no jewelry, no makeup, but enough to cover the shadows beneath her eyes. Giselle stood just off stage, arms crossed, gaze locked on her. Rachel took a breath. "You want to know the truth," she began, voice echoing. "Not the curated story. Not the engagement announcement. Not the headlines. The truth is that I lied. In a bar. To get away from an ex. I panicked. And Giselle stepped in. She said, 'She's mine.' And in that moment, something shifted. It was supposed to be a game. But the game ended the second we started looking at each other like we meant it. Flashbulbs. Silence. the world watching. We didn't plan this, she continued. We didn't choreograph it. We tried to control it, tried to frame it into something digestible, something corporate. But love doesn't care about brand strategy. It doesn't care about optics or quarterly reports. It just happens. And when it did, it scared the hell out of us. Giselle's eyes were glassy. The entire room was still. If you want to blame someone, blame me, Rachel said. For walking into a lie. For letting it become something real. For loving someone who didn't know if she was allowed to be loved in return. But don't question her integrity. Don't question her heart. She didn't manipulate this. She fell. Just like I did. The room stayed silent for a full 5 seconds after she stepped down. Giselle met her halfway, grabbed her hand, and kissed it like it was sacred. And in that moment, it wasn't about proving anything anymore. It was about surviving. Together. But survival, it turned out, wasn't guaranteed. Because less than an hour later, they returned to the penthouse to find the front door ajar. Security footage wiped. The apartment ransacked. Someone had broken in. Not to steal, but to send a message. Rachel's photos were shredded. The painting Giselle bought for her slashed. And in thick red paint across the mirror. She's not worth it. Rachel's breath caught. Giselle stood frozen. And suddenly, this wasn't about press conferences or scandals. This was war. Giselle reached for her phone. I'm calling the police. Rachel stopped her.
No.
Not yet. Rachel, this isn't just about us anymore, she said, voice shaking. This is personal. Someone is trying to scare us into breaking. We don't run. What are you suggesting? Giselle asked. Rachel looked her in the eye. We expose them first. Giselle blinked. Sophie. Or Marcus. Or someone else who wants to see us burn. We stop reacting. We go on the offensive. That's dangerous. So is loving you, Rachel whispered. And I'm doing it anyway. Giselle stepped forward and kissed her like the world was ending.
Because it might be.
But not before they fought back. They didn't sleep that night. The broken glass. The slashed canvas. The message painted in red, she's not worth it, echoed like a scream through every corner of the penthouse. Rachel paced the living room barefoot while Giselle made calls, her voice cold and sharp, commanding a private security team to triple their coverage. But neither of them felt safe. Not really. Because this wasn't about money or headlines anymore. This was a message. A threat. An escalation. It's Sophie, Rachel said for the third time, tension in her voice. Or Marcus. We can't assume, Giselle replied, still scrolling through emails, surveillance logs, financial leaks. Then we stop assuming and start proving, Rachel said, crossing her arms. We have to think like them. What do they want? Destruction. Giselle answered without hesitation. Of me. Of us. And who loses the most if we win? Giselle paused. And then, slowly, something clicked. Marcus, she said. He still holds shares in the startup he sold to Langford Global. If the stock tanks, he gets leverage back. And Sophie. She's personal, Rachel muttered. She wants to ruin you, but she's using me to do it. Giselle stared at her, something dark flickering in her eyes. Then we give them exactly what they don't want. What's that? Us. Still standing. Still loving. Still loud. They made a plan. Giselle's tech team pulled metadata from the threatening message painted on the wall, hidden code embedded in the file from the security camera footage Sophie had leaked to the media weeks earlier. Coordinates. A name. A signal. Not Sophie's. Marcus's. His fingerprints were on the money trail. He'd paid for the article placements, the backdoor hacks, even the fake social media accounts flooding the feeds with hate. Sophie had been the face. But Marcus had been the machine. Rachel stared at the screen in disbelief. He wanted to ruin me for walking away. And he wanted to ruin me for not needing him, Giselle said, her voice low. For being more powerful without him than with him. The next day they went public. Together. A press conference. This time, no lawyers. No PR firm. Just Rachel and Giselle in front of the cameras. Not performative. Not polished. Just real. We lied at the start, Giselle said into the microphone. But we fell in love by accident. And we stayed in love by choice. Rachel stood beside her, hand in hers. This wasn't a brand strategy. This wasn't a scam. This was the messiest, most terrifying, most beautiful truth I've ever known. And I will not apologize for loving this woman. A wave of applause started, hesitant but real. Giselle's voice sharpened. We also have evidence of the coordinated attacks, the false headlines, the paid smear campaigns, and we'll be pursuing legal action. She handed a folder to a stunned journalist in the front row. You wanted a story? Here's the real one. That night, Marcus Hale was arrested for fraud, corporate sabotage, and unauthorized surveillance. Sophie vanished from the media like smoke. And Rachel and Giselle, they stayed. Through the storm, through the aftermath, through the rebuilding. A month later, Rachel stood barefoot in Giselle's office, wearing one of her button-downs, hair up, no makeup, scrolling through messages from strangers who now saw her not as a pawn, but as a woman who refused to be broken. Giselle entered quietly behind her. You're still reading comments? Some of them are nice now. And the others? I don't care anymore, Rachel said, turning. They don't know me. You do. Giselle walked toward her, slow and intentional. And I love what I know. Rachel smiled. Say it again. Giselle touched her cheek. I love you. Every version. Even the one who lied in a bar just to get away from a man. Rachel laughed. You've never thanked me for that, by the way. Thank you for lying. You're welcome, Rachel said, grinning. Now, do something with that gratitude. Giselle leaned in. Their kiss was soft. Familiar.
True.
Later that night, they sat on the rooftop, legs tangled under a blanket, wine in hand. The city stretched out below them, glowing and alive. Rachel rested her head on Giselle's shoulder. What now? Giselle looked up at the stars. Now we stop pretending. We stop running. And we live. Together? Always. Rachel sat up slowly, pulled something from her coat pocket, and placed it in Giselle's hand. A ring. Simple.
Gold.
No diamonds. Just engraved on the inside. You said she's mine. Giselle blinked. You're proposing to me? I told you I would. But we're all ready. This time, let's do it right, Rachel said. No lies. No headlines. Just us. Giselle's eyes shone. Yes. Rachel kissed her again, deeply. Fully. And when they pulled apart, Giselle whispered against her lips. I don't care what the world thinks. I'd choose you again. Every time. And Rachel whispered back. Then we already won. If you enjoyed this content and want to support the channel in a special way, try clicking the thanks button below. It's the one with the heart and $sign icon. With super thanks, you can make a direct contribution to the channel, which helps me keep creating awesome videos for you.